Hello, everyone. Miguel Lloyd, Vice President of Marketing and Communication for the Atlanta Black Chambers. We want to thank you so much for joining us tonight for this conversation, Election 2020, How Black America Wins After the Storm. As we know, this is an interesting year as we're getting ready to have an opportunity to either reelect Donald Trump or replace him with Joe Biden. And so, but in addition to that, there's a lot of down ballot conversations that are going on. There are many state senators that are up for reelection, things of that nature. And so, but what we wanted to do today is that we had an idea that, we know a lot of people in this space that are on both sides of the conversation, both Democrat and Republican, people who believe in different ideologies. And what we experience is that there's a lot of things that are dropped to us in sound bites. We don't want to have a soundbite conversation. We wanted to bring on some people who are extremely knowledgeable in the space and can have a very nuanced conversation about the different issues that are going to make a difference in Black America. Rest assured, this is a conversation about the African American community. We are the Atlanta Black Chambers. I want to bring in next up. I want to bring in Marquis Tate. Marquis Tate is our president of Atlanta Black Chambers. He has a message for us to start our event today, followed up by our Vice President of Governmental Affairs, Dr. Diana Doma, and then we're going to get started with this conversation. We appreciate you giving us the time this evening.
My name is Marquis Tate, President and CEO of the Atlanta Black Chambers. We're looking forward to hearing from our panelists about our Black community and public policy topics. And I must say this election is coming after the loss of some great icons, Reverend Joseph Lowry, Reverend C.T. Vivian, and Congressman John Lewis. Special mention for the families of Rashad Brooks, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and the countless others that have died in similar situations. Our chamber's mission is to be an advocate for the creation and growth of competitive, profitable, and sustainable Black-owned entities. We're a nonpartisan organization consisting of business owners and nonprofits from all over the Atlanta metropolitan area. As we navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been an epidemic of disparities that have existed in our community. COVID-19 has highlighted those disparities in health, jobs, income, wealth, and unequal treatment in this American criminal justice system. Our Executive Director, Melvin Coleman, Vice President of Governmental Affairs, Dr. Diana Doma, Vice President of Marketing Communication, and host tonight, Miguel Lloyd of the Lloyd Media Group, have put together an exceptional panel discussion with some dynamic leaders and voices. We have conservative radio personality, Shelley Winters, who was a moderator during our Georgia U.S. Senate forum earlier this year. Former Republican strategist of the RNC, Leo Smith, a frequent guest of the chamber over the years. We have attorney Chuck Hobbs, writer, activist, and Morehouse graduate from Florida. We have co-founder of ADOS, Yvette Carnell, who has been a great resource in the conversation about reparations and the Black agenda. This is a discussion about Black people engaging in the American political system. Not minorities or people of color. It's about Blacks, African Americans, ADOS. Since we are talking about engaging in public policy, we need to know where we stand as a group. According to the census numbers, there are more than 256,000 Black businesses in the state of Georgia. Black businesses represent 27% of the businesses in Georgia. The average revenue for Black businesses is $58,000 nationally, while that is almost $70,000 in Georgia. The average white business revenues is almost 10 times that of Black business revenues nationally. The average household income for Blacks is hovering around $40,000, while whites is almost $90,000. Let's look at our wealth status, because America is built upon capitalism. The median Black family is worth 10 times less than the median white family. The average white person without a high school diploma is worth more than the average Black person with a degree, according to the Federal Reserve of Consumer Finances. Our home ownership rate is just over 40%, while the white home ownership rate is well over 70%. Let's get into politics and the political process. Voting is a very important part of the process. Because we vote, we must get commitments. Or before we vote, we must get commitments in the form of policy initiatives from candidates that match our agenda, that truly benefit our community. Then hold them accountable once they are elected. Now it's time to hear from our panelists and let them talk about the policy topics and engaging in the political process. Election 2020, how Black America wins after the storm. Let's have a real conversation tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Diane Daniels Adoma, VP of Governmental Affairs for the Atlanta Black Chamber. I would like to warmly welcome you to our chamber this evening, and we are looking forward to what we know is going to be a very lively debate. In addition to that, I just want to share with you a little bit more about our chamber. We are a 501c3, which means that's a nonprofit foundation. But in addition to that, what you may not know is that we are also a 501c6 organization. And what that means is that we can, in fact, engage in political activities, and we can even endorse if we choose to. A little bit about the chamber: we pride ourselves on having more than 500 plus members. We are rich in programming and talent. We encourage you, if you're not a member of this chamber already, to take a look at us and consider becoming a member. Some of the events that I think you might enjoy attending: once a year, we have the legislative breakfast down at the Georgia Dome. It's usually hosted with a couple of our U.S. senators, and we invite all of them to come in and speak to our members. In addition to that, we have hosted forums with just about all the main races, political races here in Georgia, such as the U.S. Senate seats with our incumbents are Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. We've hosted those seats. We also hosted local races such as the Fulton County DA race with Fonnie Willis and Paul Howard. We've also hosted congressional races, and recently we hosted the seat for John Lewis. So we are very excited, and we're very seasoned with hosting these types of debates. And I just want to say a big shout out to Miguel Lloyd, who I know will do a phenomenal job moderating tonight. Again, I am Diane Adoma, VP of Governmental Affairs, and I warmly thank you for attending and participating, and I'm looking forward to this debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane, and Marquis Tate, President and Vice President of Governmental Affairs, Diane Adoma. And so let's bring in our guests as we bring them in. Please, all of our panelists, if you will turn your cameras on and your microphones on. These people I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I've known Leo Smith for a while. He owns a company called Engage Futures Group. He is a well-respected GOP strategist here in the state of Georgia. We have Chuck Hobbs. He is a defense attorney. The Observation Point at Real Chuck Hobbs, the social media. Go back to Leo. His is Leo Smith Tweets. Chuck Hobbs has a great following. He's been a successful defense attorney for over 20 years. We're going to talk to him. Yvette Carnell, for many people who may have heard about the ADOS movement, which is the American Descendants of Slavery, which is, we're going to let her talk about that in depth and what her initiative is in policy making. And she also is a media personality with Breaking Brown. And then local Atlanta media personality, Shelley Winter. He's a talk show host, conservative talk show host here in Atlanta. I want to make sure we can hear everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
We can. Thank you.
Yvette, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for everyone for giving us your time today. We really do appreciate you. And so, as we mentioned at the top, we wanted to have a conversation today, which is going to be focused on really digging into this subject matter a little bit more depth, because what we find is a lot of people are getting their information in sound bites, and this is not a soundbite election. This is an election where we really need to know what's going on. We really need to dig into some details about this particular subject matter. So, let's jump into this conversation right now. What I want to do is I want to do a little bit of a round robin. I want to start, ladies, first with Yvette, and I want you to give us an opportunity to talk about your platform, how you're using your platform effectively with Breaking Brown and the ADOS movement. And following that, we're going to follow it up with Leo, Shelley, and then Chuck. So, Yvette, you have the mic. If you just take a couple of minutes, talk to us a little bit about what you believe about this election and how we can win, Black America can win after the storm in election 2020.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of have this discussion. When we talk about politics, typically we kind of talk about you're either a Democrat or you're Republican, and so you're either one side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle. And so at ADOS, we have looked at the wealth data and decided that we need not only a transformative politics or a body politics, but you also have to have reparations as the center of that body politic. And we have also decided that we can't just be in the mindset of, well, we're just going to vote Democrat, or well, I hate the Democrats, I'm just going to vote for Trump. I think we have to be in the mindset that we're going to vote for a particular agenda that is in our best interest. And if that agenda, and I don't see it, we can disagree, and we'll have that conversation here.
Yvette, forgive me for interrupting you just for a second. Please, if everyone mute your mic, because we're getting some feedback just while Yvette is talking, so we want to make sure everyone can hear her clearly. So please, if you're not talking, please mute your mic right now. I'm sorry, Yvette, for interrupting.
No problem, no problem. So what we're about is not just reparations. That's the heartbeat of it. But it's about putting us on the agenda, not just putting a donkey on the agenda, or not just I'm angry at the donkey, I want to vote for the elephant on the agenda. But what we're about is putting ourselves on the agenda and deciding for ourselves, having our own political thought, deciding what our agenda is, and voting for whoever decides that they're going to back that agenda. So that's how we're moving, and it's data driven.
Perfect. Leo, I want to come to you next, sir. Well-respected GOP strategist here in the state of Georgia. Brother, how are you today? Leo, if you're there, open your mouth, brother. We can't hear you.
There we go. Thank you.
We got you. All right. Go ahead, brother. You got the mic. Talk to us a little bit. Give us a minute or two about your position. There you go. We got your video now. Talk to us about your positions here as you are well-known GOP strategist here in the state of Georgia. I know you've been having your challenges right now over the course of the last 4 years, keeping it together. Let's talk about your positions right now.
Well, I think it's very important that as we sit here today, Donald Trump has been in Atlanta, and he is pushing out something called a platinum plan. I think Shelley, who is bird dogging politics even a little more closely than I am these days, I think he'll probably share a little bit about that. But the thing is that there's been some disruption in America that has brought to light the inequities that we have, and shaking things up a little bit so that we can see more clearly now. And the question is going to be, are we going to take advantage of what we can clearly see? And the fact is that I believe in something, all of us have heard of the 80-20 rule, and I think that for too long that we focus 80% as Black people on fighting against racism and 20% on fighting for economic parity and economic opportunity. And I think we have an opportunity now to turn that upside down and to fight harder and spend more time on economic and educational opportunities, skill training, vocational skill development, and business, including investing. And we can flip that to 80% of activity and still fight and be concerned about social justice and racism, but realize that changing the hearts and minds of men is not that easy. It's much easier to become a good capitalist.
Interesting. Chuck, I want to come to you next, sir. I know you've had some experiences. You were at one time a Republican, and now you consider yourself a little bit more of an independent, or let me not speak for you. As someone also who is a defense attorney, and you have a great community of people that you engage with on a regular basis. Let's talk about your positions on this upcoming election. Your mic's closed, brother.
Good evening, brother. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm glad to be here, Brother Lloyd, and welcome and greetings to all of the other panelists. Brother Lloyd, to be just straight out, I will tell you that I am fully in support of the Biden-Harris ticket. I will say that Joe Biden was not necessarily my preferred candidate in the Democratic primary, but he is the candidate that has won. I am one of those individuals that understands the concept of making sure that our collective agenda is addressed by whoever is in the White House. But I also am one of those who realizes that to a great extent, the president, while powerful in many ways, the most important thing that we have to keep in mind is what is it that's within either the platforms, the Democratic platform or the Republican platform, that does jibe the best with the collective interest of Black people here in the United States of America. And I know that during the course of this conversation tonight, some of us may disagree on what that best aim is, but I can tell you this much, having been a prosecutor at one point in time in my career, having been a defense attorney for the majority of my trial law part of my career, and having been a writer since I was 19 years old at Morehouse College, my main push as it stands right now is dealing with the caustic climate that we find in the United States of America as Black people. There isn't a day that many of us aren't concerned about two major issues. One, the coronavirus pandemic. Two, the original sin here in the United States of America, slavery and systemic white supremacy and racism. And so I am one of those that's of the perspective that it is very difficult to sit at the table and barter with individuals who are also ones who tend to denigrate what it is our ancestors endured during slavery and more recently during Jim Crow. I am only a generation removed from sharecroppers in South Georgia and migrant workers throughout the state of Florida. So that means a lot to me. This isn't what I've read in a book. This isn't what I've heard. These are stories that were passed directly to me by my mother and father and my grandparents that I knew when they were alive. And so when we have a person in the White House who, on one hand, can come to Atlanta today and meet and talk about opportunity zones and economic empowerment and things of that nature, on the other hand, you can't create and grow a business if that business stands to reason, if you're an individual who can wind up dead, if you have an improper lane change or a tail light that's busted, or how can you trust someone to follow through with what it is they have been saying? Because what we're going to talk about tonight is the Trump administration has had 3.5, almost 4 full years to fulfill whatever promises that it made way back when. So when they talked about building the wall, draining the swamp, those things haven't been accomplished. Neither have any of the accomplishments with regards to what do Black people have to lose? What do we have to lose? Our lives and our freedoms. And I look forward to talking about why it's important that we stay focused on that and get back to having at least someone in the White House who will not be hostile toward Black bodies and Black lives here in the United States of America.
All right, Chuck, I want to go to Shelley Winter. Shelley, if you open up your mic and your camera, sir. I know you are a conservative talk show host here in the Atlanta market, but you also are well, let me once again not speak for you as I didn't speak for Chuck. As far as my understanding, you are a Trump supporter. Let's talk about your positions on the conservative movement and specifically the Trump era and what has happened and been accomplished over the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's hilarious. So I just came from the event that Chuck, Mr. Hobbs, I'm sorry, I don't know you personally, so I can't say Chuck, Mr. Hobbs just mentioned. And I heard a plan. So I'm listening to a guy tell me that he wants to deal with a guy that's been there 47 years and has never done anything for Black people except hurt them with war votes, criminal justice votes. You're a criminal defense attorney, but you're telling me at the same time you're going to vote for a guy that wrote the plan and locked up all Black people. But I'm supposed to believe that that's in my best interest. But the guy that just laid out a plan for Black people off of the things that he's already done over 4 years that he didn't have to do because nobody voted for him. I'm supposed to trust the guy that's been there for 47 years. I mean, let's get this conversation started right now. I'm supposed to trust the guy that's been there for 47 years that wrote a crime bill that locked us up. But I'm not supposed to believe the guy that just gave me a plan that includes making the KKK a terrorist organization, funding Black farmers. I'm not supposed to believe him, but I'm supposed to believe the guy that's been there for 47 years. Oh, yes, brother. Let's get this conversation started right now.
Well, we're ready to get that conversation started. And so we're going to let Chuck respond to you because you called him out by name directly. But before we go to that, you say you just left the Trump rally and he laid out some plans. Let's hear 3 things that you mentioned, because, of course, we know the issue with funding of Black farmers has been going on for many years. And that's something that is something that has been challenged many times before. So let's talk about a few of those things you heard today at the Trump experience.
Right. So we've been voting Democrat for all these years, and they've never done anything for Black farmers. Right.
That's not true. Well, let me make sure I relay the ground rules. And Sister Yvette, if you want to open up your camera, because I want this to be part of the conversation that we want to get into. So, so I want us to get. I don't want this to be a talking points, a rhetoric type of conversation. I want this to be a substantive conversation, because if it's about, hold on, I'm gonna make my point. I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna let you make your point. But it's not about what the Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats and Republicans have been in the Senate. That's how it works. So let's try not to do what Democrats haven't done for Black America for the last however many years, because we know politicians of both from both sides. So let's talk about the farmers bill, the farmer situation you just talked about.
So what he's talking about is getting monies to black farmers to do what they got to do. Okay. I can tell you right now, I have a good friend that was at the event, Latron Price. Look all of this up if you want to. He called Atlanta, Georgia Democrats when COVID started to try and get something in place for farmers, small and medium-sized farmers, white and black, but particularly black. Got no callbacks. Nobody responded. We put them in touch with Sonny Perdue, Secretary of Agriculture, who got grant monies from the White House to buy fresh produce and fruits and vegetables from black farmers and small farmers. And since April, when the lockdown started, they've given out 350,000, not 100,000 boxes of fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables purchased from farmers, medium and small, black included, to give out to the community here in Atlanta since April through October. That's real. I handed out those boxes. I was there. I know that's real. That really happened. So when you tell me don't talk about what the Democrats have and not done, how are you going to tell me that while at the same time telling me I should vote for a guy that's been there for 47 years? Either we're going to have a real conversation or we're not.
Well, let's have the real part of that conversation. Joe Biden has not been in office for the last 4 years. He was a vice president prior to that. So he hasn't been in office for the last 47 years. So let's make sure we clear that record. Chuck, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond.
Whatever, dog.
But is that, hold on. Is that not the truth? What office does Joe Biden hold right now?
Dude, I'm trying to tell you, Miguel, with all due respect, I'm trying to tell you that I can't trust a man that's been there 47 years that did nothing for me.
You keep repeating the same thing. He's not in office. He hasn't been in office for the last 4 years. Chuck, I'm going to let you respond, brother. Go ahead.
Sure. My concern is this. I believe that when the old cliche that all politics is local is true. But with the national parties, when you're talking about the executive branch, essentially whoever the president is going to be beholden to whatever the platform is that's derived from the conventions this past summer. As we all know, the Democratic Party did put forth a platform this past summer. The Republican Party did not create a new platform. They pretty much said we're just going to rely upon the platform that we created back during the 2016 convention. So with that in mind, instead of going into a back and forth with Brother Shelley here and what have you, or a platitude battle, again, my concerns are far more personal. When you consider the fact that when you talk about, well, the crime bill was a bad issue back in 1994 when Joe Biden was still in the Senate. I think that in hindsight, not only has Joe Biden conceded that there were certain aspects of that crime bill that were not necessarily tenable in the best interests of Black people, but we can't forget, I was in school back then. I was a senior at Morehouse when that got passed back in 1994. There were a number of members of the Congressional Black Caucus that were in support of that. Crime was an issue. Crime remains an issue. I think sometimes it's thrown out as a somewhat of a red herring, so to speak, because, we talk, or when we say we talk, the media talks a lot about Black on Black crime. That's a narrative that you see pushed a lot from the right, when in reality, all crime is intraracial, meaning that Blacks tend to commit crimes against Blacks, whites tend to commit crimes against whites. And more often than not, what I have seen in 20 years as a lawyer is that there still is systemic inequity in how cases are brought, how sentencing is meted out. And those are issues that continue to trouble me. And that's not something that's necessarily of Joe Biden's making or the crime bill per se's making. It's a situation where most crimes are state level situations. Federal crimes are only finite. Most of the scores, when you start to see the increase in numbers in prisons across the South and across the United States in general, were based upon laws that were created that, like 1020 life in Florida, prison releasee reoffender, all of those laws were state legislated type laws that had a detrimental impact on the number of Black men and women who went to prison. So I say all that to say that even us getting sidetracked into that's something that I find troubling more often than not in the national conversation too, is that when you're talking about what's in the best interest of Black people, many Republicans tend to trend more towards, well, President Trump did the First Step Act. He signed that into law, and that was a good act. There's no question about it. But it frustrates me often that that is the issue that Republicans like to parade around and jump around and talk about, when in reality, there are so many other issues that are equally important that I hope that we're able to talk about some here this evening. So
we will.
Okay.
Let me make sure I get everybody in. Yvette, I want to come to you next, and then I want to give Leo an opportunity to respond to what he heard from Shelley. Yvette, if you have any comments from what.
Well, I think as we talk about this, there's a couple of points I would like to clarify on both sides. I've heard the Republican side of this argument talk about capital and capitalists. We have 2% of the wealth. It's hard to really be a baron of industry with no wealth. So let's just put that over on one side. The other side I want to talk about this, and on the Democrat side, you'll say, well, there were people on the Congressional Black Caucus side who voted with Joe Biden. Yes, there were, and there were those who also opposed it. So let's be fair. And Bill Clinton also said that, I'm going to do some other things. This isn't going to be the end. He made some promises that he didn't keep as a Democrat. So the point I'm making here is that these are two very problematic parties for American descendants of slavery, in this country, and Black people in general. These are two very problematic parties. And what we normally do is say, we're just going to go along with the devil, that whoever the devil we feel is less worse. And so what I'm saying is that has not worked. And I think that, there's a lot of fighting on this panel back and forth about which nominee. And I think we should, it's not just one way or the second way. Sometimes there's a third way. And I think the third way in terms of down ballot is what we should look at. We're not getting enough out of the Democratic Party, certainly. That's the Democratic Party that we overwhelmingly vote for. And we certainly aren't getting enough out of this Republican Party. And I think we really need to address a third way to kind of leverage ourselves and our vote, because this isn't working. That's my point.
Yvette, I want to come right back to you after I give Leo an opportunity to respond, because I want you to talk a little bit more about the ADOS movement, and then let's discuss that as this panel, the ADOS movement. So, Leo, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this conversation that started off with Shelley's his experiences at the Trump event today.
I want to share that I think both Mr. Hobbs and Shelley are both making some points that I think it's important not to just look at those points as partisan rhetoric. I think Shelley's point that Joe Biden has had plenty of opportunity to do some things that are impactful on Black people's lives in a positive way. I think it is correct that Joe Biden doesn't have the power to do some things because he's not the president. But the president that is there, though I have openly stated that I think Donald Trump's rhetoric that is often divisive and used for electioneering, that has racist tinge or racist tropes are used sometimes. I've said it openly and publicly on many national television shows, etc. Even though I was a guy who did the first speech opening up for Trump at the Fox Theater when he came to Atlanta as a candidate. So look, the fact is that we've got to stop being, I don't want to say this in a way that might be condescending, but sometimes we get so emotional about issues of race that we can't see some facts. And the facts are that Donald Trump has indeed, even though I don't like the man himself as a policymaker, as a legislator, as a leader of legislation, has done a heck of a lot more than Joe Biden was ever able to do with Barack Obama, even so much more that Eric Holder himself stood at Ebenezer and complimented Governor Deal, a white Republican, for getting prison reform done when Joe Biden and Barack Obama didn't get it done when they were in office. Look, we just got to be practical about that, because whatever you water grows. And look, if you continue to say that you don't care about these economic opportunities, and yeah, we're only 2% of the wealth, but that's the reason why we should be working more on it. So look, I've said it many times, changing the heart of men and women, that's a really, really tough project. And so what I want to do is get with Mr. Hobbs, with Ms. Carnell, with you, Miguel. I want to talk about, so what is the agenda? What is the track record that we've had as America? What worked, what didn't? From Wilmington, North Carolina, to when they burned us down when we were doing well economically, to Tulsa, Oklahoma, when they burned us down when we were doing economically. What is the consistent thing there? We were doing well economically. The greatest threat to racism is our own economic independence.
And that's a very valid point, and we'll come back because I want to talk about opportunity zones and things that are because we are the Atlanta Black Chambers. We focus on businesses and economics. That is our focus. But we're Black people, and so we definitely understand the issues that are there. But let's talk about Yvette. I want to come to you, and I want to talk about the ADOS movement, and because you talk about the stats, you talk about it being stats driven. We understand that the African American community, the Black folks who came here, who are descendants of slaves, we were the number one asset going back 400 years ago to help build this country. And so part of your conversation is based in reparations, but I want you to take a minute or two. Let's talk about your organization, what you're doing, what your focus is, and let's discuss that.
Well, the focus is wealth. So I just heard the gentleman say, because we don't have wealth, we should work more. Well, you don't make up wealth through labor. That's kind of what income inequality does. And we have historic income inequality in America. And you also have to take in timing. Wealth is built during specific times. That's why you have Rockefeller and Carnegie during a specific time. That's why you have the head of Microsoft and Steve Jobs come about during a very specific time. Timing is also a part of that. And you don't make that up through labor, right? Because labor has shrunk in terms of its percentage, right? We used to make way more in terms of labor, in terms of what we brought in. So you can't make up wealth through labor. That's inheritance. That's generational wealth. And what we have is a situation, that's what white people are living on right now, right? They're living on their generational wealth and their inheritance because you might be unemployed through COVID or whatever. So what we're saying is that you can't make that up. We're in the height of income inequality. If you read Thomas Piketty's book, Capital, you'll see there's no making that up right now. So what you have to do is say, what are we going to get for the plunder? The plunder, listen, we've done reparations 1,000 ways in this country before. There's no reason why we should not be advocating for that. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was greedy. And my panelists, if you guys, as long as you're in areas where it's not too loud, I want everybody's mic open because feel free to jump in as long as it's respectful. I want everyone to have a dialogue. I'm not here to control this conversation. I'm here to just moderate it. Shelley, does Trump have any position at all on reparations for African Americans?
He said at an event at the White House, he made the comment that African Americans built this country and there should be something that should be done for that. He made that statement at the White House probably back in February, I believe. It was a Black History Month event. Today, he unveiled a $500 billion plan for Black business. That's inclusive of the farmers, $500 billion. That's a real number that he said he would do, that he wants to do. So $500 billion. What Leo was saying, and what I agree with, is you can talk about reparations, and we can ask for that. But if the party that you vote 90% for the last 50 years is not giving you reparations, then don't expect the white guy that you call a white supremacist racist to give it to you. So, it's a stupid conversation to have that we're asking.
So let me ask you. So you once again, you're going back to blaming the Democrats. How are the Democrats, without the assistance of the Republican and the entire Congress, are going to?
I didn't blame anybody. I didn't blame anybody. I think Yvette's point is the best point of the night. I'm not blaming anybody. The point I'm trying to make is that at the end of the day, if there are two major parties and neither party is talking about reparations, then what are you going to do next? Because neither party is talking about it. So don't ask me what Trump feels about reparations. Tell me as an African American that votes 90% Democrat for the last 50 years, what the Democrats feel about reparations. Don't ask me what the guy you call a racist and a white supremacist thinks about reparations. That's a foolish question. That's a trap question. Now, Yvette is right. The ADOS movement, I agree with completely. I'm fully supportive. What's up, Mark? I'm fully supportive of the ADOS movement. However, that being said, in this election right now, we brought up reparations. The ADOS movement came out of a reparations conversation that was had during the Democratic primary. How long did the Democrats talk about reparations? Maybe a week? And then they put it to the side and forgot about it. Oh, I'm sorry. They talked about a study committee that John Conyers had on a record for 25 years and they never brought to the table, even when they were in charge of the White House, the Senate, and the Democratic House. So please do not ask me what I think a white man that you call racist and a white supremacist thinks about reparations until you ask the Democratic Party that you're getting ready to give your votes to in large to the tune of 90+%. Ask them what they think about reparations.
Well, because we have a two-party system, we're going to ask everyone who's in leadership. So Donald Trump is in leadership, so we have to ask the question.
I told you what he said.
You said what he said. So you told me what he said. So you told me what he said, and so let's talk about the plan. Yvette, I want you to get an opportunity to respond because he did. Let's give Yvette, Shelley, let's give Yvette an opportunity to respond, please.
Let me just say,
hold on. Let me say this, Ms. Carnell. $500 billion for Black businesses. So what does the Atlanta Black Chambers of Atlanta feel about $500 billion going to Black businesses? That's the question you have to answer.
But we also need to know what the process is to get access to that $500 million. So that $1 billion. So that's what's important. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shelley. Yeah, of course. We need to know the process. Yvette, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to respond, and then Chuck, I want to get your follow up, and then come back to Leo.
Okay. Well, first of all, what I want to say is that the reparations conversation didn't just come up in the Democratic primary. It came up because of ADOS advocacy, and so that's absolutely how it came up. And so, what I will say, I agree and disagree. What I will say is that Trump has said reparations is probably not going to happen. Right now, Joe Biden has also said that when they called him and said, what about reparations? They called his staff. The staff said, well, we're not opposed to a study. Well, a study is not good enough. You've been trying to study and do all this stuff for years, and that's not good enough. So when I look at that, what I'm saying is, I look at the Democrats and I don't see a good choice. I agree. We've been with this party forever and they haven't done anything. I look though at the Republican, I look at Trump and I say, we're not going to get anything over there either. When you look at how much we have, how much we're worth, when you look at what we have in terms of wealth, this is a drop in the bucket. This is not going to make up for what we have. It's not going to create any kind of generational wealth. And even in Trump's plan, you see a lot of the language, you see a lot of minority business. Well, minority is anybody except straight white men. So what does that actually mean in terms of where this is going to go? I'm not interested in any kind of substitute for reparations. That is the heartbeat of my Black agenda. And if nobody's going to give it to me, I'm voting down ballot and I'm not casting a vote for either of these people.
Chuck.
I'm with you, sister. I'm with you.
Chuck, you got the floor, brother.
Sure. Brother Lloyd, my concern is that with all politicians, they make promises. Either party, even third-party candidates, they'll promise what it is that they wish to do when they get into office. But the question that comes back that we must address is what is actually done. And so even with this president, Donald Trump, when you look back to the promises that he made to his own party faithful back in 2016, outside of appointing judges that most conservatives approve of, outside of that, let's go through some of the things that were popular campaign slogans back in 2016. He's going to build the wall. There's no wall built. He's going to bring.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Shelley, you can't keep interrupting, brother. We're giving you the floor. Give him his floor, and then you can respond once he's.
But it's not true.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay. He said he was going to build the wall. There's no wall built on the border with Mexico. He said he's going to drain the swamp. He hasn't drained the swamp. He's actually filled the swamp with other adders and alligators and snakes and things of that nature. His administration has been one of the most corrupt over the course of the last 30, 40 years in terms of the people who have been indicted. I can't think of, I've been following politics since I was 8 years old in 1980. I can't think of any administration that has had as many key players that were either indicted in federal court, convicted in federal court, or once they left the administration have had nothing but negative things to say about this particular president. So what does that mean? Only thing that he has really delivered on for his party faithful have been the judges. He's already appointed 2 Supreme Court justices. He's going to appoint a 3rd in the morning. I saw the breaking news a little bit ago that it's going to be Amy Coney Barrett, who's going to get denied. He's appointed well over 200 judges in the appeals and or district court level in federal courts. Outside of that, the delivery is the problem. Even this past year, as the president, as we've gone through the COVID-19 issues, where over 22 million jobs have been lost, many of those jobs are not going to come back. The Department of Labor issued a study back in August that said 42% of those 22 million jobs that are gone are never coming back. And this president still cannot foment any type of agreement between Democrats and Republicans on how to even get basic relief back to Americans who are out here struggling to make ends meet, including many Black people who cannot make ends meet right now. So with that in mind, it sounds good what the brother is saying. Oh, he promised $500 billion, but But Joe Biden can get on stage next week and promise $1 trillion, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. But it's not what.
Leo, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in here, sir.
But he hasn't.
Look, for a change, I think one of the things I've been advocating for the past couple of years, and as some people know, I left the Republican National Committee and the Georgia GOP work to focus a little bit more on building community resilience and doing work that really creates opportunity from policies that are created. And we need to start focusing less on the icons and idols of politics, whether it's Biden for Black voices or Trump for Black people for Trump or whatever. I mean, we want Trump for Black people. We want Biden for Black people. And when you shift it that way, it's less about who they are and more about what we demand. And that's, I like a lot. I love, just like Shelley, I love the ADOS agenda. And I think that because it creates and begs a conversation, what is reparations and how do we demand it? And on the way to reparations, I would add, what are the things that we can do now that create advancement? What are they? That conversation needs to be had. And we keep getting caught up in campaigns so much. This is why I left that kind of campaign stuff, because I saw that people are falling for the crack of the illusion of politics, which is Hollywood for ugly people. I mean, some people say. I mean, it's just like, it's a show, guys. I was back behind the curtains myself, pulling the marionettes, and you guys were applauding and jumping in and jumping out and stuff like that. You got to understand, the only people who are going to advocate for Black people are Black people. I said many times, I'm a Black American nationalist. I think voices like Yvette Carnell, they need to happen more. We need to care about ourselves enough to say, forget what they're saying. Let's start demanding something with an agenda. So I like to get this conversation, and I'm not trying to change it. We can keep doing it how we're doing it. But I want to know from Yvette Carnell, what are reparations? I mean, because we have different ways. I think that we have to start, what is the ecosystem that would allow us to start to move towards reparations? And so to me, when you look at that, if you've got a capitalistic system, and Yvette is talking about, and Shelley also said something about Black people building America, then therefore that's an investment model. So they built something, they were makers, right? And a maker in a capitalist economy has power. So right. If we're looking at it that way, and we propose to a Congress, to a state legislature, to a federal legislature, we propose to them that you believe in capitalism. Let me give you a capitalistic model on reparations. What is it?
And Yvette, I want you to respond to that. But while you're responding, Shelley and Leo, I want you all to think about, with the current model and the current Donald Trump, I'm talking about the Senate, the Congress, the Supreme Court justices, all of these people will play a part in any sort of reparations movement. I want you guys to think about, how do we get that done with the current leadership that we have? Yvette, you have the floor, sis.
Let me just say, when you look at white America, they have $100 trillion. You're not gonna compete with that with a multi-million-dollar bill or a multi-billion-dollar bill. It's not enough money. You're not going to compete with that level of wealth. What I'm saying, and that's why reparations is important. And when you talk about reparations, we don't have to figure it out. We've already figured it out. We've already figured out with Dr. Sandy, we already have the plan on what that looks like. So that's nothing that we have to figure out. Now, if you tell me that it has to be a capitalistic plan, what I'm going to tell you is when the Japanese Americans got reparations, when you see the Jewish people from the Holocaust and even the American government that helped with that, everybody is paid into it. It didn't have to be a capitalistic model. You're paying for something, a debt. Right? You're paying not only for slavery, but accrued disadvantage, all the way through Jim Crow, all the way through redlining. You're paying for all of that. We don't have to do anything but let you know what the number is. We don't have to. It doesn't have to be a capitalistic model. A debt is a debt. When you go to work every day, you get your check. That's labor, isn't it? You don't say, well, I have to put forth some type of capitalistic model to get what is owed to me. So that is my point.
So what's the valuation of the debt? How do you come up with the value of it?
Well, I'm not going to get into it. Dr. Sandy Darrett has done all the economics of it. And if you want to go and read his latest book, you can do that. I'm not going to get into that part.
I know what you're talking about. I just
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
So, So, so the point is that Miguel started a line of questioning. He says, 100 trillion, 100 trillion. So, so the point is that, Miguel started a line of questioning. He says, 100 trillion, 100 trillion. So, so the point is that Miguel started a line of questioning. He says, when you think about the leadership that we have politically in our country, right, including the economic advisors who are advising them on how economics work and what works best for America, then the question I'm hearing Miguel ask is, what kind of political leadership would make it more likely to get reparations?
I don't think that's the right question.
Well,
I think the right question is what kind of citizens would create the leadership that would make reparations feasible? That's the question that you have. What kind of questions, what kind of voters do we need to be? What kind of vote do we need to hold, and how do we need to use our leverage in terms of how we relate to these politicians? Because politicians ain't nothing but prostitutes. So the question becomes, how do you leverage what you have? They're going to go whichever way the wind blows. And what's been happening far too often is that we just blow with the Democratic Party, right? Even when they don't blow our way. Or then if we want to just go and say, I'm not going to vote for the Democrats, I'm just going to vote Republican. Why? They haven't blown our way either. So the question becomes, the quintessential question is, what kind of constituency are we? And what are we willing to demand and sacrifice to get what we need to be truly American and have our inheritance and generational wealth in this country? I'm American. And I'm not one of those people that wants to run away and be something else and wear something else or do something else. But I understand that I can't do it. The middle Black family is worth around $1,700. Half of Black America is worth less than $1. You can't survive in the richest country in the world like that. And you cannot make up that wealth with income inequality like that either. You have to have what was robbed of you, what was plundered and taken away from you. That is essential and necessary moving forward in this America. We don't live in a third world, underdeveloped country. It won't work that way.
Shelley, do you believe that anybody, what do you believe? Do you believe that reparations are realistic with the current leadership that we have, whether it be Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Trump supporters, whoever?
I don't. And which leads me to agreeing with Ms. Carnell. Either you're willing to take an L today to get reparations tomorrow, or you're not. Because if you're telling me you're the base of a particular political party, the base, okay? You're not a side, nothing, you're the base. You're the heart and soul of one political party. And they are unwilling to even bring the study to the floor to vote after 25 years. At some point, you got to be able to say, you know what? I'm not going to mess with you guys this election. Just to let you know that I'm serious. Because if you don't get what you want, but you're afraid of giving the other team the election because you've been told that they are going to put us back in slavery, then you'll never get reparations.
Shelley, let's have a real conversation here, brother. So tell me right now, all things, let's just say that we follow this model that you want us to follow, which is give the Republicans an opportunity.
I didn't say that. Hold on, brother. Can you?
You just hold on. You just said that we did. Okay, go ahead. Finish your thought. Maybe I misheard what you said.
I said you either have to step away. The sister said, "I'm willing to not vote for either one at the top and vote down ticket." If you want something to happen, you got to be willing to take an L now. Meaning, not get who you want.
What does that mean? Take an L now. What does that mean?
That means not get who you want in at the top. Means not get who you want in at the top. It's like it's okay.
And so how does that benefit Black America by let's ride that out.
How does it benefit you? How has it benefited you to now? You asked me.
I personally don't agree, and I personally agree not. I don't personally agree not vote at the top of the ticket for any. Vote who you want to support, whether it be Donald Trump or Joe Biden or the governor's races or whatever. I don't personally agree with that. Not vote at the top of the ticket, but you
didn't ask me that. That's not the question you asked me.
But that was your response. Your response was to take an L, which is possibly not voting, and that's something Ms. Carnell also mentioned.
Hold on, brother.
As a perspective.
Hold on, brother. Follow the logic here. You asked me a question about how do we get reparations with the current leadership. That was your question, right?
That is my question.
I'm Shelley Winter. I'm answering your question. In order to get it, because you haven't gotten it from the people you've been giving your vote to the tune of 90% for the last 35, 40 years. Correct? John Conyers had a bill on the table for a study that never came up for a vote for 25 years. So clearly they're not effing with y'all, even though you're the base. So I'm saying, to the sister's point, if you want to get reparations, you've got to be willing to step away from them and let them know you're serious to step away from them until you get what you want. It's just like a woman that does with her man. If she's not getting from her man what she wants, she goes to sleep on the couch or puts him on the couch until she gets what she wants and he gets what he wants. Now, if you're not willing to do that, don't ask me the question.
All right, Chuck, I want to come to you, give you a response. And next topic, I want to go and talk some social justice. Do you have any response on that, Chuck?
Sure. My concern is this, is that when we're talking about the issue of reparations, we have in this country a number of our fellow Americans who have a major lack of knowledge of true American history. American history, more often than not, is taught in a way to inspire patriotism, which in its extreme form is jingoism. And I think that one of the things that's been very interesting to me over the course of the last few weeks in particular is that many of you probably got a chance to read parts of the 1619 Project that the New York Times published last year. And that has now become a talking point from the right, talking against it, saying that, well, when you're talking about slavery, when you're talking about issues like Jim Crow and lynching, that's not telling the true American history and it's making the country look bad. And so my concern is this: if there are a number of Americans who don't know what slavery is, if they don't understand what the 3/5 compromise was, if they don't understand how the 1820 Missouri Compromise or the Kansas-Nebraska Acts or the Compromise of 1850 or all of these issues, how the growth of this very country came from either cotton, tobacco sales, particularly cotton. If there was no cotton that was picked by our ancestors, the United States of America would not have become an economic superpower. There are so many people, white people, Democrats and Republicans, but definitely Republicans, who don't know that. And because they don't know it, they have no interest in trying to ameliorate any of the issues that we can all sit here and say flow from 256 years of slavery and over 100 years of Jim Crow. So with that in mind, I think that it's definitely something that we should be pushing for. But at the same time, we've got to go back even further than that. There are a number of our white fellow Americans who have no clue as to why it is reparations is being asked for. And Mr. Smith said something earlier, too, before we go on, that I found that was interesting. On the one hand, when he's saying capitalism is the key and economic growth and empowerment is key, I don't disagree with the aspect that we do need to make sure that we empower ourselves financially. But again, the same point that Mr. Smith was making, which is when you look at Tulsa, 1921, when you look at Rosewood, Florida, 1923, those were vibrant communities that were destroyed because of the fact that there were jealous whites who were not happy that Black people were doing well, independent from them. And so when you keep that in mind, it's a symbiotic circle that's made, which is you can't just have economics and not also have social justice. If you have people who have their knees on your neck, literally, there's no way that you're going to actually prosper as a business owner, because if they're angry, they'll do like their ancestors did and just come in and try to overwhelm us in numbers and kill our Black bodies.
Leo, I'm gonna let you respond as he mentioned you by name, sir.
And Mr. Hobbs is right. I mean, and that's why I said 80-20, and I just said I would just flip it around. I work on social justice issues even today, and I continue to, because they are important. And as the father of Brown's children, I mean, it's very important that I do that. When I moved into my neighborhood, the very first thing I did was go and make sure I met the chief of police that I got on the Cobb Foundation for the police foundation. So, I mean, you know, that's a social justice activity that is afforded a person who has earned the ability to walk into certain rooms and not be kicked out. Now, so my ability to take social justice to another level came because of the training and education I got, not only from my mentors, but also through an academic and educational process, matched with the ability to earn money such that I can afford to be a contributor in a way that garnered entry. So social justice and economics, they do go together. And so, yes, we need to do both, but we need to spend more time getting one. One time someone asked me, do you care about when Governor Deal said ghetto grandmothers? And I said, well, right now I care more about Governor Deal doing prison reform, and I care more about Governor Deal doing work that would allow a Black kid to choose a school that's right for them, that isn't full of violence, where they can focus, where they can get textbooks and the things they need to learn so they can go out there and compete. Because look what you started the conversation with, the 1619 Project. That didn't start in the education institutions that we're so married to. That started with the New York Times, a media organization. And that is an evidence, brother. That's the evidence that we're following a system that is failing us and it doesn't even work. So we're now leaning on media to now be the education solution instead of grabbing on the opportunity that policy created with independent charter schools, where I was involved in founding an independent charter school in Buckhead called Atlanta Classical Academy. And Atlanta Classical, the Black kids there from Bolton Roads are coming over and they're doing well with wealthy kids from Buckhead. They're killing it. So much so that Atlanta public school system couldn't believe our test results. The kids are closing the racial gap. That's because the independent charter school movement, Black people, go create those schools, create the theme and the vocational education that you want to do. You have an opportunity here to take over education and teach whatever curriculum you want.
Let me ask you this. Do you really believe that the conversation around the 1619 Project would have happened without independent media? Would have been taught. Do you believe it would be in the conversation?
I think people like Yvette Carnell helps create that conversation. I think the young people right now protesting on the streets and going to every school system and saying, I want you to rethink education. I think that helps that conversation, those kinds of things. And media doesn't hurt if you use it the right way. I'm not saying media is evil. I'm just pointing out emanate from the educators that we feel so indebted to, and teachers can't be touched in the education system. And, we should never criticize it and we should never do something different. I don't want my kids being taught by media. My kids go to a private school.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Let's move over to social justice. And Yvette, is someone trying to respond? Go ahead.
No. I didn't say anything. Somebody else said something, I think.
Was that Shelley? Was that you? Okay, no, I thought I heard something. Okay, forgive me. All right, so let's move on to social justice. Right now, we're in the midst of a storm. All over the country, everything that is happening, whether it be the decision that came down with Breonna Taylor just 2 days ago, Ahmaud Arbery, the list is so long. Chuck, I want to come to you. I want to start this part of the conversation with you because you have had your experience as a criminal defense attorney. So you've been in the fight with this for many, many years. I'm at a loss for words. What with this social justice movement? What is the answer? How do we get past this right now and get us to a place where we can start having some progress in this conversation?
Brother Lloyd, that's a great question. I think that one of the things that has disappointed me the most over the course of, I'd say, the last 5 or 6 years in particular, I know that the slogan Black Lives Matter was first, I believe, popularized around the time that George Zimmerman was acquitted down here in Florida for having killed Trayvon Martin. I know that it's morphed into different iterations, say her name, say his name, things of that nature. But at some point in time, when, and as a media member myself, I take a lot of time to listen to both sides. Like before I write an article or do a podcast, I enjoy listening. When I say enjoy, I have to listen to what's being said on the right so that I can try to come to some type of balance in what it is I'm writing and what it is that I'm trying to say. And one of the things that has been completely just disingenuous from the right has been the whole trying to make the Black Lives Matter issue in regards to, it's a Marxist organization, taking away from the fact that there are very few Black people in this country who are card-carrying members of a Black Lives Matter organization. That just doesn't happen. What happens here is it's a slogan. It is something that we feel where essentially, as we explain more often than I would like to, that when we say Black Lives Matter too. And so at the end of the day, what I know for sure is that there are still very many gross inequities in the criminal justice system with regards to how Black people are treated as opposed to how white people are treated. We all can almost say it as mantra. We know about disparities in sentencing when it comes to cocaine as opposed to crack cocaine back in the 80s, 90s, and even in the early 2000s. We also know about the fact that no matter what the crime is, and I have seen this firsthand myself, if you are a young white male, a white woman, and a much greater chance.
Guys.
Mr. Shelley, please mute your mic.
Mute your mic, brother. And I'm going to come straight to you, Shelley, after Chuck finishes. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, there are gross inequities with regards to how Blacks and whites are treated in the criminal justice system. So when we talk about the entire police excessive use of force, the immediate answer to how to stop getting the police knees off of our necks, literally, is to create a climate within which they no longer have this qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is half the reason that bodies are being dropped, the Black bodies are being dropped, because most officers know that they don't necessarily have to have that moment of reflection, that pause, because more often than not, what's going to happen is they're not going to get prosecuted by the local prosecutor. The police benevolent is going to swoop in and going to try to provide them all the protection that they can find to basically, make sure that they don't necessarily go to jail and or prison for what it is that they do. And we see this time and time again. And so the only thing I push for is I would like for law enforcement officers who have committed either a reckless killing, which could be second-degree murder. I think is very rare in most of the instances that I have watched over the last 10 years where there was actually a first-degree murder type charge from a law enforcement officer. We all know that first-degree murder means there has to be a level of premeditation involved. But there have been plenty of situations where there was second-degree murder, which is a reckless type of shooting, and or manslaughter, which is negligent type of shooting that we've seen time and time again. And yet more often than not, we see instances where officers are not indicted. And I'm going to tell you what that is. There's another ruse that I would be remiss if I don't talk about it with our watchers this evening, which is the grand jury ruse. I'm a former prosecutor also. Before I became a defense attorney, I prosecuted. Basically, the prosecutor, the local district attorney or state attorney, is part and parcel with law enforcement. They are part of the same team. One is the quarterback, one's the offensive lineman, but they line up on the same team each and every day.
Right.
So most prosecutors are hesitant to file direct charges against law enforcement officers because the fear is if they do that, they will fall out of favor with the chief or the sheriff or the PBA. And when that happens, they're going to have competition in the next general election, right? And we all know that most human beings like power. They don't want to lose their power. So they're not going to go against that. We have to change that narrative where, as Yvette was talking about earlier, down ticket races. There are so many of our brothers and sisters who can tell you who Joe Biden is. They can talk to you about Donald Trump all day. But if you were to ask them, who is your district attorney? Who is your state attorney? They might not know. And that is a position that is very important. In many cities, the local sheriffs that's an elected race as well. We have to make sure that we put our attention there so that they understand that more so than a lobbying association, that the will of the people by vote is if you have Black bodies being dropped because of an improper lane change or a busted tail light or an instance where somebody should be apprehended without deadly force being used, if you don't prosecute these people, we are going to make sure that we put somebody in office who will.
Look like we may have lost Shelley. We'll see if we can get him back. But I want to give Leo your response, an opportunity to respond. And then Yvette, I want to get your response to what Chuck just talked about. Now, before, real quick, we have a few questions that are I've been sent from the chats on Facebook. We may have someone on, and we're going to try to get some of those questions in as well. But Leo, I want to come to you, brother.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Hobbs is I want to reiterate the importance. Living in a county with a very close friend and great district attorney, Joyette Holmes, is quite a pleasure and a blessing. And the importance of understanding going down your down ticket. So in other words, I know who my DA is. And my DA has the Ahmaud Arbery case. Now, if you weren't there, if she didn't make the tough decision, and I'm not, I'm probably a little less partisan than Shelley is, even though I've worked for the Republican National Committee and the Georgia GOP. However, I want to say that that Joyette she decided that working and being a benefit to Americans and to her local community and specifically to Black people was more important to her than partisanship. And she actually joined the Republican Party to run for DA. Y'all probably know that. And part of the consultation that helped her get to that place. And she became judge of magistrate, etc. So, and now she has that case. And guess what? The woman is down. I mean, she cares about us and she cares about these issues. It is a huge victory for us that case got placed with her. Now, I gotta tell you that she's gonna do better than Daniel Cameron, that's for sure. So the point is that's where it starts. These local races for that kind of work that Brother Hobbs is talking about, it's extremely important. So we have to continue that. As a Republican, the conservative values in me from a when I'm talking about a platform Republican, not a Trump Republican, two different things.
Right. Right.
Against search and seizure, okay? Because I don't believe that government should be able to just come and take my property, all right? Against no-knock warrants with violence, unless violence is evident within that place that you're not. See, these are things that is easy from a true Republican platform. Those things would be easy to get movement on. Because
I got to challenge you on that just a little bit, Leo, because before President Trump, we were having problems. We were having these type of problems with police long before Trump. You know, we were having problems like this with Obama. Right. And so so I think so are you saying, I'm gonna make sure I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that with the current or with the real Republican platform that we wouldn't have these issues? Is that what you're saying?
You caught it. No, I didn't say you wouldn't, because if you got people, you're going to have problems, right? I mean, people are always going to have problems unless you got a system that, of course, adjusts for what people need. And our system right now is off kilter, and it should be off kilter, because our system is not what it should be. That's Yvette's pointed all along, that we've got to build the system, and the people have got to demand the system. The people have got to be something different so the system changes. That's irrefutable. So what I'm saying to you is that we've got to learn how to use the hammer and hit the right nail. And in some cases, we make motions there. And one of the most important things about local is that people think, for instance, when it comes to moving on these agenda items, yes, if a true Republican platform, the movement against search and seizure started from the Republican side. It started from that side. The movement against that is starting to speak out against police intrusion is primarily, it wasn't a racial issue. It was more like, I don't want anybody, you got some militant group up in the mountains, they don't want anybody just being able to come in and take stuff from them or to show up on their property unannounced. So these things about liberty and freedom, we just got to make sure we argue it for ourselves too, for Black people and brown people as well.
It seemed like those liberty and freedoms always seem to work in rural areas, but you get into urban areas, and that's where the rules seem to be different. Yvette, I want to come to you, sis. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to what you've heard last few minutes.
Well, let me just say something. I want to respond to Leo, something Leo said really quick that kind of stuck out to me, right? When he said that he got, talked about justice, and he said he went to the police board and became a part of that board as like getting justice. And what I want to say is that you wouldn't have done that if you knew you didn't have justice. Like, if you thought you were protected, you wouldn't have gone and tried to kind of purchase a carve out for yourself in a particular community. You did that because most white people don't run into unless they're very civic minded, don't have to run in the community and say, how do I purchase justice for myself? That's something that we're not talking about, it doesn't happen to just brown people. That's something that specifically happens to ADOS as a bottom caste. You see, when you see, most often when you see other minorities, whether it be Asian, right, and a lot of other people, we have a lot of heads of tech companies who are Indian American. It's not just about brown people. This is something that happens to us. And if you have to purchase justice, you don't have justice. And I'm not interested in necessarily an individual carve out where you can purchase justice for your individual self. I'm interested in a collective uplift. And I think that's what we have to do. We are in this kind of space sometimes where we believe that we're allowed to have certain differences. I don't even think we are allowed to have those differences. I think we should all get in the room and figure out what our Black agenda looks like and adhere to it. We have not gotten to a place where we just get to go off and be different kind of butterflies and bumblebees. We don't get to do that. We don't have that kind of freedom yet. Now we should. We've earned it. We've been here longer than anybody. We've been here longer than all these immigrant populations, right? So why are they being able to purchase and buy into justice and this multi-diverse society, and we haven't? Well, I think we have to collectively get together and decide that this is the most important thing: reparations and a transformative Black agenda, not just piecemeal, not accommodationist Black agenda. And I do think we have to be willing to let Democrats know that, listen, we are, whether you look at white women, whether you look especially at white men, whether you look at Latinos, it don't matter who you look at, we vote Democrat, Black America, more than anybody else does. So we are the foundation of that party. And what we need to let them know is that, listen, if you don't do what we need you to do, the foundation will sure enough crumble. It's just what it is.
So I want to, and Chuck, I know you have a hard stop here soon, so I want to get you back re-engaged. But
okay,
one thing I wanted to, Yvette, there's the conversation around the ADOS movement in some regards seems to eliminate some parts of Black America. And that's the conversation that I see and I read a lot online, right? You know, if you're a Caribbean American or you are Nigerian, this isn't about you. Was that you and Brother Tone? Was that y'all's intention from the beginning? Is that the direction that you're looking to go? Because it feels like you're kind of eliminating some potential allies, but I want to give you the opportunity to expound on that.
Well, no, actually, we have a lot of constituent allies. Like if you listen to our shows, we have a lot of Black immigrant allies who call in, and they understand that reparations is specifically for us, just like everybody understands that only Jewish Americans and descendants of the Holocaust survivors get that. People understand that Native Americans, that I can't walk over to the reservation and say, this is me and I want part of the casino. Everybody seems to understand that, except when it comes to ADOS. We don't exclude anybody from our Black agenda. The Black agenda is the Black agenda, but the heartbeat of that Black agenda is reparations for ADOS. Now, I don't see how anybody can have a problem with that. I don't have a problem if the Haitians tomorrow, if they get their reparations from France, Caribbeans from CARICOM and all the Caribbean countries, what they're trying to do, I have no issue with that. I don't see how it's an issue when ADOS. When you look at pre-1965, the number of Black immigrants who was here was to the right of the decimal point. Most African immigrants who came here post-1990. You can't voluntarily come to a country and then come late and then say, I am entitled to what the slaves, for what goes all the way back to slavery. It's obvious that that's not a carve out for you. Now, we're not saying that if you come from the Caribbean that you all shouldn't have CARICOM. If you come from Nigeria that you all don't have a debt that's owed you from colonialism. I'm not getting into that. That's your business. This is my business.
Got it. I appreciate that clarity, because I know, Chuck, you have a very active social media community, and I know that comes up a lot in some of the conversations that are going on in your community. Do you have a response?
Yeah, it does. And I appreciate Yvette for expanding upon that in the eloquent way that she did, because I think that what happens is you have Yvette, you have Tone, who are, doing the leadership of the ADOS movement, and you have people who listen to them who might not be able to articulate that in the same way. And so that's why you get some of the comments that you see on social media, on my page, where it's almost as if people who can trace their lineage, their African lineage through the Caribbean or even Africa itself, feeling as if they're under attack. And so from a practical standpoint, one of the things that I've always been curious about, and I will admit that I don't have enough knowledge about it, and it's something that I need to read up on, because I know tonight's not the night for Yvette to hold a session here and enlighten me directly. But one of the things that's always kind of been interesting to me is so many of us are miscegenated, right? And so you may be able to trace ancestry to people who were enslaved here in the United States of America, but so many of us can also trace Mr. Charlie in our bloodlines as well. And so I've always wondered where those people line up. Do you have to have pure bloodlines? Do you have to just be able to trace an ancestor to American slavery? I've always been, curious about that. And I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, there's no way you're going to have, listen, I have always said one thing. Absolutely sure. This is not about genetics, because we are descendants of slaves and slave masters. That's just the way it happened. When Black women did not have control, over their own bodies, you know what happens. And we've seen even past that, you saw the rapes and so on and so forth. So no, this is not about genetics. This is about tracing your lineage to slavery. And you don't have to, this is not complicated, because if your people were here, we said, remember what I just said, like pre-1965, Black immigrants to the right of deficit point. If your people were here before that, we can about say 99% of the time that you're ADOS, right? Now, and we're not saying you have to tie everybody in your family or both grandparents. It's not hard. And that's one of the things that they've done to us, is make us say, oh, it's going to be hard. How you going to figure that out? No, you just have to think, if your people were here and you got grandmama, great grandmama, all of these, I got pictures of sharecroppers in my family. How hard is it for me to say them people came from slaves? So it's not a hard way to figure it out. And we're not talking about bloodline and purity, because we don't have that here, right? Like I said before, and a lot of the reason why we don't have that here. So we're not talking about bloodline or purity, and we can get into that in the specificity and the tying of the knot and grandfather knot. We can get into that in another conversation, but no, it's not about blood purity.
It's been an
Brother
amazing
Lloyd.
conversation. Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
Brother Lloyd, if I can, and again, I want to thank you and the Atlanta Black Chamber, number one, for this opportunity to speak this evening. And I really hope that as we push closer to November 3rd, we have some more opportunities to sit in dialogue like this. I've enjoyed it. But I did also want to make one other point before I have to go for another engagement. Mr. Smith raised something that has troubled me as well over the course of the last decade, which is, generally speaking, you have found the Republican Party over the last 50 years to be big, huge Second Amendment rights individuals, folks who talk about a man or a woman's home being the castle. Those are things that have always been hallmarks. You'll take my guns from my cold, dead hands. Those are some of the slogans that I have seen riding around the South almost my entire life. And yet I see rank hypocrisy from the NRA as well as from most Republicans when, if that's your slogan, that you take my gun from my cold, dead hands. Well, what happened with Philando Castile up in Minnesota a few years ago, an NRA member, a concealed weapons permit holder, who told the officer that I have a concealed weapon, I have a permit, and still got shot and killed? What happens when a man is in his home or in the home of his girlfriend, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker? They're there resting. He's not the individual that law enforcement was looking for. It's the ex-boyfriend who hadn't been in that home for weeks on end. It was a botched raid altogether. Kenneth Walker did what any other red-blooded American male would do. If you hear somebody prowling around at the door, if you are armed, you're going to grab your arm and you are going to fire at somebody. And yet now his girlfriend has been dead for 6 months and what have you. And some of the same Republicans who talk about their homes being their castles are now quiet as church mouses, or they are saying, well, no, I support the blue. I back the blue. She shouldn't have been dealing drugs, or she shouldn't have been dating a drug dealer, or he shouldn't have fired at the cops. They give myriad excuses to the fact that they are hypocrites, which is it? Are you a Second Amendment proponent for all Americans, or does that only apply to white Americans? That's something that I have found troubling across this country over the course of the last 10, 15 years.
Brother Smith, we'll let you respond, brother.
And that is why the hypocrisy anywhere is why you have to be at the tables that they're at so that you can explain and point out that hypocrisy. I'll give you an example. You remember the story about I can't remember what city it was. I think it was Maryland. There was a wealthy couple that happened to be white that protesters were marching down their street.
Missouri, in Missouri. Mm-hmm.
So they came out with a long gun and a pistol and said, "Don't come on our property." And at one point, the white male actually approaches the sidewalk towards the street that these people are peacefully walking down. Right. So because I happened to be at the table where some Republicans will listen to me, I said, well, how would you feel if it was a group of white people marching down for the Irish Day Parade, for St. Patty's Day Parade, and some black people standing on their property holding guns started to approach them? That created an interesting conversation. So this is why it's important to be there. It is important to point out those ironies. And that's why I said we can use that and flip the script on.
What up, brother? Don't tease it. You got to give us how did that conversation go?
With logic and reason taking over emotion. And them, you're right. I kind of did respond in a way that was more, that challenges me about my racial beliefs and my feelings about things. In the same way, when I sit and I have conversations about the Breonna Taylor situation, and by the way, we don't have a clue what happened there, by the way. And I want to tell you that. You guys are going to find out some huge stuff. I know Daniel Cameron. I don't think he did a great job, but I'm going to tell you that this situation is going to be a national investigation of police corruption. And we're going to learn a lot more about that situation. But here's the other thing that I am certain is going to happen because of this time and voices that are starting to speak out against this on both sides. Yes, white folks don't want what happened to Breonna Taylor happening to them. Okay, they don't want it. So when you challenge them like that, you're going to now start to see white folks agree that no-knock warrants need to be reevaluated. As a matter of fact, Kentucky already has already created legislation to stop that kind of activity. So yes, we're going to see improvements in legislations that's going to benefit everyone. And The whole Philando Castile thing, I've done events. I've done events with Black engagement for the NRA. The idea is that we have to become a constituency that says, look, we need to have those rights too that you defend. And so that's the side of that I'm on. But I'm also on with technology being used in policing so that guns don't go off unless there's a threat. And there's technology being created like that.
I'd be curious to hear more about that technology. We have a couple of questions from the chat that I want to. So we have Stephanie in the chat. What about the third party? And I want to bring this, Yvette. I want to bring this to you. What about the third party? There's a movement for a People's Party that is organizing for 2024 that is being supported by Nina Turner and Cornel West. Does the panel think this is a viable option?
Well, I respect, Dr. Cornel West was at our last conference. I respect Nina Turner. I've been in contact with her. These are all people that I respect, and I will have to be in some conversation with them about how they're planning to do that. But I'm not opposed. And the only reason I'm not opposed is because of the people involved that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. That's why I'm not opposed. Normally, what I would say is that I think, what they're signaling as insiders is that there doesn't seem to be a home for transformative politics, especially for ADOS America in the Democratic Party. That's what they're signaling. And my thing would be, well, why is everybody trying to get me to vote for them this year? Like, if you're telling us that we have to leave the party that we have been the foundation of, and we make sure everybody get elected, we turn red states blue for Obama, and he still said he opposed reparations, right? So I don't think that I owe that party anything. And so normally I would be opposed to another party because I feel like we have purchased the one we in. But if these two people are involved, I think I have to talk to them, because if they're involved in something going on, and I have to take a look at that and see what they're up to, because those are two smart people, and I hold a lot of esteem for them.
Chuck?
Yes, and this will be my final comment. And again, Mr. Smith and Yvette, again, great, Leo, Yvette, great speaking to both of you. And Brother Miguel Lloyd, thank you again for having me on. But I'll say this much. As I said at the top of the hour, I am a person that is advocating for the Biden-Harris ticket. Are there difficulties with Biden as a candidate? Absolutely. I think that there is no such thing as a perfect candidate. That's one thing that I have always appreciated. When I say appreciated, understood about Republicans. There are a number of Republicans across the country that despise Donald Trump as a human being, but they appreciate Donald Trump from the standpoint of his advocacy for the issues that they hold dear, which goes back to what Yvette said earlier, which is we have to have a continuous dialogue in this country about what are those issues for Black people that are near and dear to us. Well, I can tell you this much, just over the last 3 or 4 years, it's not just what he tweets. I mean, I've heard Brother Smith say several times today about the emotions. It's difficult, no matter how intellectual you are, no matter how professionally accomplished you are, to not be emotional when you have someone who is denigrating Black people, when you have someone, I'm the son of a military veteran, I am the nephew of, he was a Vietnam veteran, I had an uncle who was killed in Vietnam in 1967. So when you're reading tweets about the disrespect that he's said over the years to members of the service, if that doesn't bother you, well, I mean, that's you, but it bothers me. When you look at someone who talks about in glowing terms, Confederate leaders, someone who's pushing against his own Department of Defense that has indicated that they want to change the names of bases like Fort Bragg and Fort Benning and Fort Gordon and Fort Stewart and Fort Hood and all of these bases that are named for Confederate generals, they want to change the names, but Donald Trump's like, no, we want to keep the names. Those things are problematic to me. And I'm sorry that Brother Shelley isn't here anymore for me to readdress that, which is, it's difficult for me to believe that any man who supports the issues that Donald Trump has supported on those particular planks, an individual who constantly has so much negative to say about people of color, I'm not going to believe just because he goes to a conference today and says he's going to give $500 billion. Well, hell, General Sherman said that he was going to give 40 acres and a mule in his Field Order 10, and we're still waiting on that 55 years later. So with that in mind, I think that it does provide some level of emotion because, again, our bodies are at risk every day. I have this year, Miguel, you've seen it on Facebook. I've been doing this walking challenge. I'm up to 2-3 miles a day, almost every day. I've lost about 36 pounds. I still need to lose about 75 more to get to my goal. But the point is even in my exclusive neighborhood here in Tallahassee, Florida, I have to walk during the daytime because I am concerned that as a large Black male, that if I walk at 4:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, when I usually am up and really would like to be out walking, that if I stumble across the wrong white person who's afraid that I'm a mugger, or if I stumble across a cop that's patrolling the neighborhood and is wondering, where are you? Why are you out here? That I too could be the next hashtag. And so with that in mind, that does provide some level of emotion, and we should be emotional. If white people can be emotional about Michael Vick dogfighting, if they can be emotional about 9/11 and all sort of other stuff, Cecil the Lion and Harambe and all of this, the gorilla and all of this other stuff, then I can be emotional when Black lives don't seem to matter in this country. So with that, I love you all. I thank you all for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to talking some more soon, Brother Lloyd.
Brother Chuck, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, take care.
And your contributions.
Thank you, sir.
Leo, I want to give you an opportunity to respond because he did call you out during that message there.
Oh, no, I think it was a wonderful message, and I really have enjoyed this conversation, and I'll be here as long as you guys need me to stay. The issue of emotionality, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have it, and you should have it, but I do want to make one statement, is that it shouldn't control you, and you shouldn't lose opportunities because of for loss of emotion. And we should develop the capacity to call a thing, understand that we have to respect it for what it is, racism, oppression, etc., danger, but at the same time, be able to work on the problem in a way that's helpful. And for example, I'm the chair, I'm on the COVID-19 task force. And for a long time, we had a hard time moving towards helping Black people because some of the partners that I wanted to engage for prevention related to COVID, targeting African-American communities, they didn't want to do stuff that would give Kemp some bona fides. Well, you're on the governor's task force, and if we help through the task force, then the governor is going to get credit, and the governor, we don't like them. And so people get into this, that's the kind of emotionalism. I'm working on real problems. I'm trying to save Black lives. And so sometimes I just go, when it comes to the issue of race and the emotionalism about race, I gotta go, well, look, maybe people like me, sometimes we're less surprised when white people are racist. And it seems like some Black people get surprised when white racism exists. And they kind of fall out of their wagon, like, oh my God, they've done something racist. I think when you're working in policy and you're trying to create movement, you see the ugly side of people. You see darkness all the time. And maybe that's made me a little jaundiced. It's colored my perception a little bit, that I'm working with these dark people doing dark things that are then going on TV and trying to say they're light. But I know that I'm just not, and I've been an armor bearer for pastors, and at the same time, I don't treat pastors like they don't have faults, right? So when white people do something racist, it doesn't shock me and then make me lose my agenda. I'm going to keep working on my agenda regardless of white racism.
This has been an amazing conversation. I want to give opportunity as we lost Shelly and then Chuck is gone, so I want to start to wrap up. But Yvette, I want to give you an opportunity. I want to give you an opportunity to talk, close out your thoughts on this. What I would love to get from both you and Leo is a perspective here. If Trump wins, if Trump loses, if Biden wins, if Biden, going from here, because the title of this was Election 2020, how Black America wins after the storm. Somebody's going to win this race in 40 days. And even with Trump threatening to throw the votes out and send it to the Supreme Court. January 21st, 2021, we will now have a new president or the existing one. How do we win from your perspective? Let's start with Yvette. How do we win from your perspective, regardless of who wins?
Well, I think Leo just said something that's very important. And I think that thing is, when he said he was working on the COVID task force and he had things that were good for the Black community, and it was like, well, we don't want the Republican to get credit for it. And if you do that, they're going to get credit for it, or what have you. And I think one of the things that we have to kind of throw away is this idea of, I have to just stick with my party, whatever my party is. I don't care what party that we know most Black people are Democrats, but it really doesn't matter to me. I think we're at the point where we have to be race first, not ideology first. Meaning we have to put the needs of our people ahead of everything else. And listen, if need be, You know, if need be, if you have to argue with if you're a Black Republican and you have to argue with the Black Democrat in the daytime in front of people for lights, y'all still need to come together in the nighttime and talk about what that agenda needs to be, regardless of what the overall conversation is. I think life is too important, and we're on the bottom of every metric. Like I said earlier, half of Black America is worth less than $1. When you're talking about a group in the negative, you know, largely, nearly wealthless, we don't have the luxury of putting ideology above everything else. So we can't be ideologues. We have to say we have to have a Black agenda. Reparations needs to be the heartbeat of that agenda, and we have to be willing to move together. And I think we have to be willing, if we're Democrats, to sacrifice. I've never voted Republican, but I think the top of the ticket is not for me. I'm not voting for Joe Biden. I don't have any faith in that man. And so I think we have to be agenda driven. We can't let people scare us. I still remember when everybody was telling me, you know, oh, we gotta, and I was like, listen, before Obama comes up again for re-election, we have to renegotiate what we're gonna get out of this man, because we didn't get anything the first term. And everybody was telling me, oh, we just gotta not know Mitt Romney. He's just awful. And that's just not good enough. We can't have this kind of boogeyman politics. We have to have agenda politics. And I think that outweighs any kind of ideology, any kind of small government. You might be small government. This reparations still need to happen. It's a lot of small government Republicans that still vote for big budget defense packages, right? So This is a thing that just needs to happen for the group. That's it.
Right. Brother Leo?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better than Yvette said it. And that's exactly it. I mean, we've got to be agenda focused. You know, folks ask me all the time, well, Leo, you're given credit for tripling the Black vote for Governor Deal and getting 47% of the Hispanic vote for Perdue. And no, I went to people who wanted an agenda, and then I got those candidates to talk about agenda items, prison reform, school choice, et cetera, tax credits. And the Latino community especially responded to it related to Perdue, even though he was saying he was against immigration. And they were still focused on their agenda items, and he was checking the box on some of them. The immigration thing wasn't huge for them. That's how they moved their agenda, okay? But Black people have not focused on that collectivism, and that is the hard thing that Yvette is talking about. I got criticized by Black Republicans because I help appoint other Black liberal Democrats to the COVID-19 committee that I chair, the subcommittee that Black Republicans. How dare he point all these liberals? Because they don't get it. They are partisans. I am Black agenda first. I'm not pro-Republican. I'm not pro-Democrat. I'm pro-Black.
Please give your social media handles, both ladies first. Yvette, how can people follow you? How can I know you guys? Yeah, I was watching your show earlier from a couple of days ago on Breonna Taylor. I really enjoyed it. Let's make sure you share your handle.
Oh, at Breaking Brown on Twitter. At YouTube, you can find me if you type in Yvette Carnell or Breaking Brown. You can find me every Monday and Wednesday night. Usually come on around 10:15. We stay on till around midnight. And it's a call-in show, and we have a conversation around Black politics. That's every Monday and Wednesday night. So it's always a pretty interesting watch.
All right, awesome, Leo.
Well, you can find me at Leo Smith Tweets, and that's and also Leo Smith Politics on Instagram. LeoJSmith.com is the website, and I'm going to be working on a project bringing back fusion politics, which is the politics of Black economics and education from Wilmington. And so keep an eye out for that as well.
We really do appreciate you both. We hope that you'll accept our invitation next time. This won't be the last time. We'd love to talk to you all. You know, maybe after the election that's come through. Let's make sure we shout out Shelley Winter. We're just going to assume his connection. He lost connection. You can find him on social media at Shelley Winter. That is with a Y and with an E. So SHELLEY Winter, WYNTER1. Chuck Hobbs has his blog, The Observation Point. You can find him in most platforms at The Real Chuck Hobbs. Great conversation. We appreciate y'all. I'm Miguel Lloyd, Vice President of Marketing Communication for the Atlanta Black Chambers, owner of Lloyd Media Group. I want to thank Marquis Tate, our president. I want to take our Executive Director, Melvin Coleman, as well as our Vice President, Government Affairs, Dr. Diane Daniels-Adoma. We'll catch you all next time. Make sure you follow us and join our community. We always got something going on. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Thanks so much, man.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.